Hello, and welcome to day one of 7 Days of Hope. My name is Scott, and I am very pleased to be here and pleased to be able to introduce my colleagues who are in all parts of the country. Marisol and Trina, and Russ in the lower right-hand corner.
Hi, Scott.
Marisol, if you would take it away, please.
Before we get started, I did put together a video from some things that Trina and I do when we are together and when we're working together. And I think it will help all of us start out this journey in just a special way. So Scott, if you wouldn't mind. Hello, fellow Hopers, family, friends, and Hope revolutionaries. It's Marisol. Welcome to the 7 Days of Hope. I'm part of a wonderful Hope team. We've been working hard with Trina behind the scenes, and we hope you have a wonderful time tonight. Or today, it could be today, depending on where you are in the world, right? But we're so happy that you've joined us. Thank you for trusting us with this time together. Before we go on to our live presentation, and I'm sorry you might have to put up with this few minutes every night, but I want to bring us into state. I want us to all just take a moment to just relax our bodies and stand still and just acknowledge however we feel. However we feel, just acknowledge that. And then let's take a deep breath, just a deep inhale. But when we take that breath, let it be the breath of hope. So let's take that breath together. And we're going to hold for 3. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to release whatever cares, whatever things we need to let go. We're just going to release it as we exhale that breath. And we're going to do it 2 more times. We're going to inhale that breath of hope. And we're going to hold it for 1, 2, 3. And on the exhale, we're going to just release whatever we need to release and let go, whatever we need to let go. And one more time, breathe in that breath of hope. And breathe out whatever we have to release. And when you're ready to get back into the room, we are ready for you. Welcome and enjoy the 7 Days of Hope.
I feel so privileged here that such a team. This is not the kind of thing anybody could bring off. And the theme this night is technology. My experience now, especially with us older folks, I'm on a group on Thursdays of people meeting together. And we have so much trouble getting online or getting on our Zoom. This is all new for almost all of us. I'm hoping that everybody feels courageous about the technology. I have real questions and critique of technology and that horrible 5G that's supposed to be coming. So I'm really against all that. But we wouldn't be together at all if we didn't have this. So right now, that's the point of this evening is how do we use it for good? And this brings in Russ. Russ O'Con is my good friend to start with. And we have a wonderful story which he wants to tell about how we ever met. Because we wouldn't have met in many other circumstances. But Russ has inspired me a whole lot with his dedication to his children and also his special work, which is to make technology work for kids. So there he is with a daily newspaper. It's not a paper, it's an online paper, and he'll tell you about it when we get to that part.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Russ, if you could just tell a word or two about what we're about to see, please.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to give a little backstory here, because how does a child who grows up with the book end up becoming friends with the author of that book? And the story is ridiculous. It really is. The more I think about it, the more it doesn't make any sense in the world. But I moved to Montclair, New Jersey 12 years ago because my son is 12. So we moved here to this town and within the first year or two of living here, and I had no connections to New Jersey at all. I moved here, and a couple blocks away from my home, I was on a stroll with my son. I think he was maybe 2 years old at the time. and we came across a butterfly tent where they were raising butterflies and letting them go. It was a crisp fall day. And outside of the butterfly tent was a woman sitting by copies of Hope for the Flowers. I said to her, I know this book. I grew up with this book. This was my favorite book. And she goes, well, that's lovely to hear. I'm the author. And so we started chatting, and the story gets pretty wild from there, because fast forward a few years later, and my life is going through upheaval, and I end up.
Hey Russ, let's leave that as a cliffhanger. Let's go into chapter 1 first, and then wait until you hear what happened after that.
We're celebrating transformation these days. Spring in the Northern Hemisphere. Hope. Light coming in darkness. And I'm wondering about what's going to happen with the world as we all live through this coronavirus time. Well, we're doing 7 Days of Hope. And here it is, this little book that talks about this in 7 chapters. So that's what I'm about to read right now. Hope for the Flowers. A tale partly about life, partly about revolution, and lots about hope for adults and others, including caterpillars who can read. And the one reading is the one who did the words and the pictures, Katrina Paulus. And the back is also encouraging, especially in dark times. It's a different sort of book for everyone, except those who have given up completely, and even they might secretly enjoy it. So here we already have something happening without words. There's some eggs being laid. My thanks to everyone all over the world who has helped me believe in the butterfly. This is the tale of a caterpillar who has trouble becoming what he really is. It's like myself, like us. To the more of life, the real revolution. And to my father, who believed in it. As I was finishing this book, my father was dying and in the hospital. And I remember standing there the night before he died, thinking, it works. Because I was so afraid that everybody's thought of this, and what am I doing spending all this time writing this book about caterpillars and butterflies? It seemed ridiculous. And so I stood there with my family next to my father and thought, it works. And you'll know by the end of the book what I mean by that. Chapter 1. Once upon a time, a tiny striped caterpillar burst from the egg which had been home for so long. Hello, world, he said. It sure is bright out here in the sun. I'm hungry, he thought, and straightway began to eat the leaf he was born on. And he ate another leaf, and another, and another, and got bigger, and bigger, and bigger, until one day he stopped eating and thought, there must be more to life than just eating and getting bigger. It's getting dull. So Stripe crawled down from the friendly tree which had shaded and fed him. He was seeking more. There were all sorts of new things to find. Grass and dirt and holes and tiny bugs. Each fascinated him, but nothing satisfied him. When he came across some other crawlers like himself, he was especially excited. But they were so busy eating, they had no time to talk, just as Stripe had been. They don't know any more about life than I do, he sighed. Then one day, Stripe saw some crawlers really crawling. He looked around for their goal and saw a great column rising high into the air. When he joined them, he discovered the column was a pile of squirming, pushing caterpillars. A caterpillar pillar. It appeared that the caterpillars were trying to reach the top, but the top was so lost in the clouds that Stripe had no idea what was there. He felt new excitement, like sap rising in the spring. Maybe I'll find what I'm looking for. Full of agitation, Stripe asked a fellow crawler, "Do you know what's happening?" "I just arrived myself," said the other. "Nobody has time to explain. They're so busy trying to get wherever they're going up there." "But what's at the top?" continued Stripe. "No one knows that either, but it must be awfully good, because everybody's rushing there. Goodbye, I've no more time." He plunged into the pile. Stripe's head was bursting with the new drive. He couldn't get his thoughts together. Every second, another crawler passed him and disappeared into the pillar. There's only one thing to do. He pushed himself in. This is the end of chapter 1. And I want to say thank you, Thais. It's really something to see yourself on this kind of a thing. And it's the first time I've seen it with the music and with her playing. Thank you, Thais, for making this music accompaniment. How lovely. How really special. So, Marisol, you feel you're kind of orchestrating this story of Russ. What do you have in mind there?
Oh, I just wanted to hear the first chapter. Sometimes it's always great to leave people in a cliffhanger because Russ has a great story. But now that the chapter's over, I think we want to talk a little bit about the chapter before we go back into Russ, right?
Well, yeah, Russ says that he gets something out of it when he reads it. I do too. I feel this book didn't come from me. It came sort of through me, I guess, and I don't know why God gave it to me. So I feel it was a real gift, and I'm made the shepherd of it. That's why I have to be kind of fussy, and I don't want people to minimize that pillar and just make it just a love story, which a lot of people have tried to do when they wanted to make movies. It is a love story, but it's a love much bigger than most loves are. It's a love that reaches out much further. We haven't met this love story in this book yet. We still are the ambitious. He's not even ambitious quite yet. He's just a wandering one that knows that somehow he's supposed to get up someplace, and everybody's going there. Everybody's going there. And that is interesting. That was Deepak Chopra in his reference to it. He used it in one of his meditations. That was the point he made, that we go places because everybody's going there. So that's one comment about it. I don't know what you all have and what you would like to share.
Does anyone have anything to share about chapter 1? If you do, just go ahead and type it into the chat while Russ goes ahead, because I don't know, I'm on the edge of my seat, Russ. I want to hear the rest of this story. So what happened between you and Trina?
So I developed a lovely friendship with Trina. She made me feel like I had found my home in a funny way, right? I didn't have family in New Jersey, but I moved there. And I was raising my kids in New Jersey, and it's felt like, well, if she's in Montclair, then maybe I'm supposed to be here too.
Oh, Russ. He ain't never said that before, folks.
The truth.
But one of the things we did, Russ, is go to the New York Times editorial department together, because I thought of somebody who's into, I won a raffle, folks, and that was going to see the editor of the New York Times op-ed pages. And I wanted to invite some young authors or some people who might find that a much more useful thing than I would. So I invited Russ and my friend David Greenwood. So maybe he's watching too. Who knows who's watching here? I don't know who's watching. So that was an interesting experience to be taken around the New York Times.
For me, it became very personal when I was in Montclair and I was actually with my kids, and basically I was going through a divorce at the time, and I didn't really have roots in New Jersey. I didn't really know family. I didn't have places to go. So what I would do is I would spend afternoons with Trina and my kids, and Trina would show them how you look for eggs, monarch butterfly eggs on the underside of leaves of milkweed plants. And she would show how you compost, right? And these are all life skills that I never learned. I'm a Manhattanite. I didn't look for monarch butterfly eggs. And in her generosity, she opened up her home to me. And she said, as long as you need to stay here, you can stay here. You can stay here with your kids. And at the time, I had nowhere else to go. I hadn't yet set up my own life here in Montclair and in New Jersey. And for a while, I stayed with Trina and I stayed with my kids in her home. And there were times when I would wake up and she'd be there reading her book to my children. And I can't even begin to explain the serendipity of that, right? And especially here's this book that meant something to me 30 years ago. And now here I am going through a great transformation. And I realize how much more there is to life. And the book has so much more meaning at age 40 than it did at age 10. Although it probably meant quite a lot to me at age 10. All I can say is that it's been an incredible ride, and I'm so grateful to have been part of this journey. And it, again, when I think about it, it doesn't make any sense. What are the odds? What are the odds of this story actually happening? And, you know, there were times that I would just sit and I would watch Trina read her story to my kids.
And Russ, it's the beginning of this. I didn't know you were on a casual walk and happened across that thing. I thought there was some publicity, and you knew that we were having a butterfly tent, because we often did. And in September, and that you stumbled across it, that really is, really very special. I haven't heard this whole beautiful story in the way he told it tonight. Thank you very much, Russ, for the deep personal sharing. That's pretty special. I think this is a time with all this virus and people getting sick around this. A good friend of mine, I just heard, was in a nursing home, and she got positive. Now she's 99. So what do you do when somebody's 99 and has a lot of other problems too? So it's not so clear. So
I have a question, and that is of Marisol. Do we have, you've been keeping an eye on some people in the audience. What might they have to say?
Well, we've got some people watching from the Philippines here. Someone, Mia, says hi to that. There's a Jersey girl here who went to Caldwell College. Montclair's a beautiful town. Everyone loved your story, Ross, and how beautiful, what a beautiful gesture that you were able to live with Trina. Russ, one thing I would love to know a little bit more about is your children, because I happen to know there might be something special from one of them around here somewhere.
Yeah, it was wonderful to watch these lessons get passed through, and their names are Owen and Aubrey, and they're two of the most incredible humans I've ever met. I'm biased, obviously, but also watching Trina's influence on them, both indirectly through her book and then directly, right? Teaching life skills, teaching kindness, teaching joy. It was wonderful to watch. And I know I have a little clip of Trina reading to Owen from, this was a few years ago when we were in the same home. So I'm not sure if we have a clip of that.
We do. We do. Is that something that you feel that this would be a good time in the course of the program to dip into? How long ago was this, and what were the circumstances again around your Trina reading to your children?
Probably about 5 or maybe 6 years ago now, and gosh, I think it might have just been a good old bedtime story.
this is something that was captured probably when video was brand new and not as common as it is nowadays. So it's one of those very special moments that is captured. Shall we just go right to the video and
Let's remember to mute ourselves.
Does it have page numbers?
Well, some of them do and some of them don't. I see this one doesn't. The single-minded approach really helped, and Stripe felt he was getting much higher. But some days it seemed he could only manage to keep his place. It was especially then that an anxious shadow nagged inside. What's at the top? Stripe avoided Yellow as much as possible. But one day, there she was, blocking the only way up. Well, I guess it's you or me, he said, and stepped squarely on her head. Wasn't that an awful thing to do for somebody you talk to? Something in the way Yellow looked at him made him feel just awful about himself. Like no matter what is up there, it just isn't worth it. Stripe crawled off Yellow and whispered, "I'm sorry." And Yellow began to cry. I could stand this life hoping in what was ahead until I met you talking to yourself that day. Since then, my heart just hasn't been it. I didn't know how badly I felt about this life until then. Now when you look at me so kindly, I know for sure I don't like this life. I just want to do something like crawl with you and nibble grass. Stripe's heart leapt inside. Everything looked different. The pillar made no sense at all. I would like that too, he whispered. Yellow, dear, maybe we're close to the top. Maybe if we help each other, we can get there quickly. Maybe, she said. But they both knew this wasn't what they wanted most. Let's go down, Yellow said. Okay. And they stopped climbing. They clung to each other as masses of caterpillars crawled over them. The air was terrible, but they were happy with each other and made a big ball so nobody could step in their eyes and stomachs. They did nothing at all for what seemed a long time. Suddenly, they didn't feel anything crawling over them. They unrolled and opened their eyes. They were at the side of the caterpillar pillar.
And I think it's clear when I watched that those lessons were heard. When I watch my son play soccer, he's the only kid I've ever seen who, when another kid on the other team falls down, even in the middle of the game, he'll run over to him and grab his hand and help him up. It's not a ruthless way of being on a sports field, but it shows kindness and it shows that he's not stepping on other caterpillars to get to the top. And it's clear how much of an impact Trina's book has had on me and on my son and on generations across the world.
Oh, God, whiz. Oh, my. You got a preview of chapter 2, folks, with that. That's chapter 2. It's not the whole chapter, but it's a lot of it. So those people, it's not a cliffhanger exactly now. You know what's going on, but we'll get the whole chapter tomorrow. Okay, so Marisol, do you have more people in the wings there that have things that you wanted to bring in?
Well, I've got people again saying, do you have a butterfly tent every September? Can you make this into an Audible book?
Well, that question is easy. We do have an Audible book that I made for the 25th anniversary, actually, where we tell a little bit about the background of how it came to be. It was an audio tape. Now, technology has changed so much that it became a CD. It's not an Audible book in the way people get it now. We've never released it that way because it's very nicely recorded. It's very, very well done. in the Random House studio. It's probably the most technically sophisticated things I've ever done. And so what to do about that? We might have more things to decide by the end of these 7 days, Marisol, that we don't know the answers to right now. What was that first question? That was interesting. What was that first?
About the butterfly tent. Do you have one every September?
Well, people, the monarchs have been down about 90% in the last 6 years. This past summer was a good summer, so we didn't have it in the same place, but and Russ actually 2 years ago did organize a big butterfly celebration in our new park. That was Russ's doing, and he got the tent. So, but for about 5 years, we didn't have enough butterflies to do it. You know, maybe instead of raising 500 like I was able to do this past summer, there was about 15 to 30. And when you have just a few like that, it's not fun to have a tent. So that's the answer to that. We try to do it. Is she around, Montclair? Or does she want to make her own? Does she have?
I'm not sure where she's from, but I also have another one that says, Mia says she and Dre are members of the group who made the Filipino adaptation.
Oh, I'm so glad. I wish I could see her.
And the reading that you were doing with Owen, they were saying was very hard to adapt. That was a difficult part of the story to adapt. But
somebody said, yes. They won the prize for the best adaptation in Tagalog, the native Filipino language, for this past year. Did she say that? Well, anyhow, I'm saying that because that's wonderful, Mia. Congratulations. This is the closest we've been to each other in a sense. We've emailed back and forth, you know, all the stuff that happens with arrangements and the permissions and all that.
Go ahead, Russ. Were you going to say something? Okay. Well, that's good because I think I was going to say something, and that is, Trina, I'm so glad that you're able to reach out around the world because we've, behind the scenes, seen so many people connect with you from the Philippines and from South Korea and from Iran and other places. Could you mention just a little bit about the impact of Hope for the Flowers that you've seen across political borders?
Well, you've pretty well said it. It's also in Chinese and and Japanese and Korean and Russian. So there are political borders we've talked about here. And Iran, I think that's one of my favorite stories. I got one from a young man who is being drafted into the Iranian army. Now, we can't have any official relationship, you understand. I can't give permissions. We can't get royalties. We can't do anything with Iran right now. But it gives me great joy to think of it being an underground bestseller. And of great interest to me is that the word revolution is on the cover. Hope and revolution. And then I have inside the real revolution is the real revolution of life. And that means a total turning, like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly is a revolution. It's a tremendous change. You wouldn't guess there's a butterfly inside of a caterpillar. You'd think it was a little worm and you should step on it. So to get something from Iran, that is the only country that did take that whole section off. The Chinese left it, the Russians left it, all the other countries left it, but the Iranians took it off. Maybe that was not what could go well. I'm imagining it was the word revolution. I don't know that because communication is pretty poor, but I got those precious emails from people like that. And there's been a second one, and she wanted nice permission. I said, I can't give permission to anything related to Iran right now. I just can't. So that's the way things are right now. And may peace reign and may stop doing these sanctions. People are suffering also like we are from the virus. So,
well, you know, I'm glad you brought that up because in the back of my mind, I'm wondering if we're going through kind of a cocoon period right now where instead of everyday, normal, not paying that much attention to things. I mean, we're forced to be able to kind of sit down, take a deep breath, relax, be with our families. Hopefully that brings families closer together. Maybe it surfaces something that might be needing to be attended to. But that's where we are right now. I'm wondering what Hope for the Flowers might have to say about the other side of this coronavirus situation that we're in. Or what sort of lessons should we look for in terms of, going forward? Trina, but also Russ and Marisol. I'd be interested to
And
hear
the
what you
people
guys
in
have
the
to say.
and the people in this chat. I bet that's partly what this whole series is. And if you don't do it today,
I'd like to let you know that there are some people from, I just lost it, Winnipeg. They're coming in from Canada. Several people. Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada is here. What caused the butterflies to drop in numbers? Anything special someone would like to know?
well, just plain ordinary weather changes is one thing. It was freezing lots down there in the place in southern Mexico, Michoacan, where the butterflies go, where the monarchs, I'm talking mostly about monarchs. That's what I know mostly. A lot of other butterflies make a chrysalis up here and stay over the winter. And by the way, some butterflies do make cocoons. Most butterflies make chrysalises. And cocoons have more meaning for us when we go into our cocoon. It's hard to say, I'm going to go into a chrysalis now. It's easier to think about the world is in a cocoon. And I looked that up in the library, I remember. I need to be sure that at least some butterflies make cocoons, and some do. Most butterflies make chrysalids, like the monarch makes a chrysalis. And it doesn't weave it. It doesn't weave it around itself like the ones in Hope for the Flowers. They weave this silky thing around like a silkworm does. And moths mostly make cocoons. But let's see, what were we on? We were on something, and I get distracted by myself.
This is free flowing. We're talking about revolution. We're talking about changing from one thing to another. It's a very special time that we're in at the moment.
Well, we're going to be changing these mammoth things that I hope. Have you ever heard of the Shock Doctrine? Naomi Klein wrote a wonderful book called The Shock Doctrine. She wrote it after 9/11, which is one of those world-changing events. Everything was different after that in some ways. And she says, in the light of a big event like that, people get so disconcerted that things happen without a lot of thinking, like the Patriot Act was passed. That's caused a lot of trouble. Lots of us think it's not a good thing at all. And so war and lots of things keep happening when there's a shock like that, and people are too numb. And right now we're pretty numb, don't you think? I mean, that's what I think. I think we're pretty numb. And my reason for wanting to do this so much was that we use this time that we're in cocoon, that we can share with one another like this through the means we have, not sitting next to each other, but at a distance. And we're at a distance, all of us, watching and speaking. And that we use it to get together with people as best we can, and then come out of it and learn how to raise food for ourselves, learn learn things. And we're not being political in this session. We're not going to talk about things in the sense of politics, but we do have to talk about things in the sense of making a better world. Everybody should be for that. And I do find that some of these issues they're not right or left. They're not conservative or liberal. They are just human. And for instance, I bought things recently from the Patriots for Trump people. And I'm not a patriot for Trump in the sense of politics, but we have the same desires. We want energy that we can control, and that is solar energy and wind energy. And we want food that is not contaminated so we can grow our food. I'm hoping maybe after this we can tackle some of these big issues in a heavier way. But this forum is not for that. It's not for calling names. It's not for saying who anybody should vote for.
Yeah, I think
Exploring.
I think that we want to, and also in our private conversations, we're mostly gently political, if political at all. One of the things that I have thought about, and I would appreciate your comments, and especially yours also, Russ, and your connection with kids nowadays, is that in America we might have felt immune to, or things happen other places, they don't necessarily happen in America, and all of a sudden we've got this pandemic, and it's, man, can this happen to us? If this can happen to us, what else can happen to us as well? And so people might look at climate change with new eyes, or other things with new eyes once this has passed. Do other people have some thoughts on that?
I'm wondering what our young fan has to say, because I happen to know one of our young fans by the name of Owen did submit a video. It's around here somewhere.
Okay, well, that's a great toss to something that Owen put. So let's go right to that.
Technology has been really good for me lately. I really like how I'm able to communicate with my friends and people that I can't be with during this time. I also really like how it sort of inspires me to do drawings and art. And without technology, with those social media apps, I probably wouldn't be this far and stuff like that. And I really enjoy doing it. So yeah, that's a great thing about technology. I also think it's really cool that there are things and activities that you can do with your friends or family that you can't be with during this time, those Zoom type apps, and I think it's really great.
Yeah, who was that person that we just heard from, Russ?
Gosh, he's so big. It's still wild to see him. Yeah, he's that's my son, and he's 5'5", just about 12 years old. But I think he speaks for a lot of today's youth. Kids actually are a lot. I don't want to say they're unaffected. They certainly are in a lot of different ways. But if this had happened 20 years ago, they really wouldn't have an outlet. They really wouldn't have a connection. Here in 2020. Most of us have an opportunity, and not all of us, and that's still a problem, but most of us have an opportunity to connect. And for kids, that means an opportunity to share and to create and to express themselves. And whether it's using Newsomatic to talk about a news story and about current events, or I know my son uses TikTok to share his artwork. He's an artist inspired by maybe another artist that we're all on the line with here today. There are just so many opportunities, and I think that, to the point earlier, we can use this time in the cocoon or the chrysalis, whichever words you want to use, to really sharpen our skills and to become our full selves and turn into our butterflies, and then we can come out on the other side and we can create that better world.
Well, you said pretty well, Russ.
Absolutely. I just want to read some things that came in on the chat. This pandemic time is giving us an opportunity to do and be different. Let us pray that we don't waste this possibility. That came in from one of our team. And there's another one that says, back in 1987, I was pregnant and introduced to your book by a lady that cared for my son after he was born. I bought a copy and read it to him over his whole childhood. It was his favorite book. He carried it even into adulthood and shared it with his friends. He passed in 2017, and some of his friends wanted this book to remember him by. And it is serendipitous that it would have been his 33rd birthday this week on Wednesday, the 15th. How beautiful.
My goodness. How beautiful that is. You get messages all the time from your readers, don't you, Trina?
And you know that very well, don't you, Scott? Scott has now become such a loyal, beautiful friend. It's quite amazing sort of thing because he gets this. Scott, what is that you get? You get you get an announcement whenever Hope for the Flowers.
Well, this is such a wonderfully technically connected time that we are in the world that we're able to have a clipping service, free clipping service. Google provides one, and then there are others as well. When anytime there's a keyword or whatever words that you want to are out there on the internet, they gather them together and can give you a daily list. And it rarely, I mean, it might only be that 5 or 10% of the posts that it reads actually deals with Hope for the Flowers, but still, out of the tens of millions of posts that are out there, it's great to be able to find someone who's in the Philippines or who's next door. One of our guests on Sunday has got an interesting story about posting Hope for the Flowers for his sermon, and we'll save that story for another day. In any event, we can get those, and I can gather them and then share them with the entire team.
What's very special now for me, and just to say it again, to have a team like this is the first time in my life that I've had such a group of people that we could really work together with who have such talents. And there's one behind the scene who has just created a website. And during this week, I think it's going to go live. And right now we have, last year, my good website disappeared. We couldn't get it back. There's a big problem with it. And it disappeared. So Marisol came through with the one that you found this program on, that you got through on. She did that. She's very competent for doing that kind of thing. But our friend Sam is behind the scenes doing the other website. He might be working on it right now, or he might be watching. I don't know what he's doing.
Or both.
Or both.
Yeah.
Yes, he works sometimes while he's watching.
He did pop out on the chat and say hello. So he was out here interacting. I want to let you know that Mia says a lot of realizations this time. After this quarantine, even a simple touch with a friend will not be taken for granted again.
Yes. We don't have to do virtual hugs, huh? We can do real ones. Huggy hug.
At some point.
So Russ, could you talk a little bit more about the network of young people that you have been able to gather together and how they're responding to having to stay at home and school at home and not hug their friends or fight with their friends, but whatever they happen to be doing? What contact do you have and how are they faring?
Well, as I said, one of the most important parts about the Newsomatic platform that I've created is to help make sure that kids have the opportunity to express themselves, right? So they can actually draw pictures, they can ask questions, and overwhelmingly, these children are positive. I think we forget that, I think some of us adults get a little worn down by the world. Children have incredible optimism, and they're wildly resilient. I'm just flipping through some of the drawings we get thousands of drawings every day from kids all around the world, and they're so positive. It's wild. I mean, here's a drawing. I don't know if we can see here. We're all in this together, right?
Well, that is visible. We can see that well.
And it's so inspiring to see these every day. And this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for them to show the world what kind of planet they want to grow up in, right? When we emerge on the other side. Children are also naturally born environmentalists. They want to save animals. They want to save the world. And I think when we come out on the other side, we can't go back to normal, the old normal. And I think that this is an opportunity for these kids to make sure their voices are heard. I mean, we were seeing that at the end of last year. I was in New York City when Greta Thunberg went to the United Nations. The entire city, the youth were just flooding the streets I really felt like a different type of revolution. And those kids may not be marching together in the millions like they were in 2019 for obvious reasons, but I don't think that the message is any less strong now. And in fact, I think thanks to technology and the way that kids can continue to share and create and express themselves, their message is as strong as ever.
For those who are watching, tomorrow we're going to have an author on who has just written a book called Wild Hope. You could even look it up tonight. And it's about the animals going extinct. And Wild Hope is that we can do something to stop some of that. So she's going to be on tomorrow, one of the authors. We're going to have several. But that fits what Russ has just said. And so that woman and I have something in common. We both wrote about animals, but I wrote in a very different way. She writes the very realistic situations of these animals. And mine is scientifically pretty correct, except they don't crawl up high pillars, and we don't know if they make decisions about going into the cocoon. So those are the artistic licenses in the book. And it's only on the very last page or so that we have anatomically really correct caterpillar and butterfly, so people could see how many legs it really has. This is the page at the end of the book where we have the actual legs and exact face of the butterfly and the caterpillar. So when you see it, and by the way, Russ and I have both done something for this period in terms of helping people have easier access with less cost. And Russ can tell about his, but we've lowered the cost of for the first and only time, down to about the only reasonable thing we could do, to $2.99 for our ebook, so that people who have the technology can get it. Hopefully, almost everybody could afford it. Now, again, those people who don't have technology, that's a problem. But the others, and Russ, you're doing something special with Newsomatic. What are you doing?
That's right. So Newsomatic, we've never taken advertising. We don't really find that's appropriate for young readers to have to fight through advertisements to read and understand what's happening in their world. So we've usually been a subscription, but right now and through at least into the summer, we are completely free with no signups required. Anybody can just go onto the App Store or Google Play on any device and just download Newsomatic, and we level all of the stories for kids between grades K through 8. So with multiple levels of text. We're in English, Spanish, French, and Arabic. We read all the articles out loud at all the levels and in all the languages from native speakers all around the world. And the idea is that, this is one planet. We all share it. I think it's never been more true than right here in 2020. And we want our kids to grow up and to be empowered by what's happening.
And Russ, how do you get that done every day? And I think of you doing this kind of level. I don't know if you can show the people, but at the bottom, you can click on quotes from it. You can click on definitions of words. You can click on somebody speaking out loud. You can click on a slideshow, and then you can click these translations. Yeah. I mean, it is incredible what you have for these stories.
Thank you, Trina.
How do you do it?
Well, I don't do it alone. Usually I would say I have a newsroom in New York City, but right now we're all spread out all around the New York area and around the country, where we're all working from our living rooms and our kitchens. But I think the best part about what I do, I love all the multimedia. We're using technology. I have augmented reality where kids can see a real globe, where shows where all the stories are taking place around the globe and where they are in relation to it. So it's not just a map, but it's actually, it shows kids that they're part of this world, right? So just a subtle way that technology can actually empower kids, make them feel like they're part of it rather than they're reading something and they're disconnected. But I love the stories that we get to share. And I'll just finish with one story here that really shows the power of what kids can do. We did a feature on this child right here. His name is Michael C. Platt. There he is right there. And he's from Georgia. And we interviewed him for a story. He learned that because of the coronavirus shutting down all the schools across his community, that there were children who weren't getting meals. We don't talk a lot about this, but a lot of children have what's called food insecurity. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. And for most kids, they knew they were going to get breakfast or lunch 2 meals a day at school. When schools shut down, they could no longer get access to those meals. And so what this child did, he's 14 years old, he actually created snack packs full of healthy food, and he dropped them off, keeping his distance, of course, at the local food pantry. And it was his way of helping. And he's actually part one of our series. We're calling them coronavirus helpers, children who, in their own ways, through their own talents, through their own creativity, and that was completely his idea. And I want to just promote his story. I want to amplify his voice. And I want to show kids all around the world that they can help in their own ways too. You don't have to have $1 million. You don't have to have web design talents. You can just share with your heart, and you can make the world a better place.
Before we wrap up, I would love this question to come out. It's being asked of all 4 of us. And the question was, what is a quick fix for when your anxiety is taking over at this time? So when you're feeling that anxiety, what do we do? So people in the chat bar, if there's something in the chat box, if there's something that you do, please share so that we can share here too. And if you want me to take this first, I would love to.
Yes. That's what you did for us in the beginning, Marisol.
Yeah, just breathe. In 2018, I lost my husband to cancer. And for almost 2 years, it felt like I couldn't breathe. Like I could not breathe. And it wasn't until I was able to find a way to release that tension and to just breathe that I started to move forward. And I don't think you ever get over it, but you learn to live with it. And when these anxiety times happen, what I do is I remember all of the things that I'm grateful for. And that's what I focus on. And I start to think of all of my children. I start to think of the blessing that I woke up this morning. And in all of the things that are happening to us in this world, there are good things that we could focus on. There are things that we could turn our attention towards. We can't change what's happening, but we certainly can change how we react to it. I also keep a band on my wrist, and I pop it sometimes just to snap me back into, okay, come on, get yourself together here, don't fall into a panic attack. But a breath, just a breath when you're getting into that anxious state, to just stop and acknowledge what you're feeling, because what you resist will persist. So you can't resist your anxiety. It's real. What is happening to us is real. But you're not alone. We're going through this thing together. We're all together. And so knowing that you're not alone, and knowing that there's places you can reach out, and knowing that you can always pop into the Hope Revolution Facebook group and find someone there to talk to, or, you can reach out and jump on a Zoom like we're doing tonight and just spend some time with people, find a way to connect. But for the quick fix, for me, it's, what are you grateful for? In all of this terrible stuff that's happening right now, what are you grateful for? And focus on that.
Thank you for sharing that, Marisol.
Thank you. Well, Rasta, do you want to go next, or would you prefer I go? Please.
I'll just hold up today's edition of Newsomatic, which I did in part for those kids who are feeling the same way. And it's, let's try yoga. Because you got a lot of people, including me, that are stuck in fairly small spaces. And that anxiety for me, if I can't get outside, if I can't run around in nature, if I can't ride a bicycle and move my body, that anxiety has nowhere to go. And so what we're trying to do is give kids some opportunities to learn how to actually move their bodies, stay fit, stay healthy, practice their breathing. And yoga is actually a solution for a lot of those. And it doesn't really matter how much space you've got in your home.
And I do Tai Chi sometimes. Not as much as I should, but that's another thing that doesn't take much space, because you do it standing. You don't have to do any lying down on pads or anything. So that's a relaxation thing, and it helps you just relax totally. So I recommend it too.
And Marisol, you reminded me of my favorite human virtue that I think gets far too little attention, and that's the value of gratitude. So I don't know if I could say much more than that, but I know that just by virtue of counting one's blessings or for being great, looking at those things that one can be grateful for changes the whole environment. You're lifted up. You're reminded. I can remember when I was a kid, like 10 or 11 years old. Russ, you might relate to this because you have so much contact with kids. When I was a kid, we had a cartoon of some character that would go around all day saying, "Oh dear, dearie me, oh dear," and there's a cloud over his head. This was on TV. So I thought I'd try that. And for an hour, 2 hours, it seemed like a half a day, but for a while, I did that. Just, "Oh dearie, dearie me." And I was shocked. It scared me how terrible I felt after doing that exercise. And that helped shape a lifelong belief that I have, is that we mostly create our own realities. So if you look for things that are uplifting, that's uplifting. If you look for things that are depressing, well, you get what you look at, or you get what you look for, in my opinion. So that would be and thank you, whoever asked that question. Thank you for asking it, because it was a very important and a very interesting question to ask.
So when we put these 7 days of hope together for you, we wanted to have a call to action at the end for every chapter. So at the end of this chapter, we found Stripe jumping into the pile, following the leader, and going right up to the pillars. So our challenge to you is, if you're afraid of the camera, you could write it out, but if you can come into our Facebook group, The Hope Revolution, if you're on Facebook. If you haven't joined our group yet, if you scroll down on the live event page, if you're here, you'll see a button to go ahead and join that group. And you can just post what your takeaway was for the chapter 1 of Hope for the Flowers. And what we hope to have by the end of these 7 days is not only Trina's readings, not only our chat, but also your reflections of each chapter. Also in the Hope Revolution group, we did put up a post. Anyone who wants to share a hope story, if you have a story about the book, if you have a story about hope, if you have a story about how you're sharing in this time of pandemic or something that you're doing, feel free to turn on that camera, upload a video. The form is in the Facebook group. We can also make it available on the Facebook page if you don't want to join the group. If you're over on YouTube, what I will do is I will put a link to the form in the description of this live event once we go to replay, and you can get that information there. But we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear your stories. We would love to be able to share, just like we did tonight with Owen, and we were able to share his story with you. We'd love to hear from you, and we hope to see you tomorrow right here, same bat time, same bat channel, and invite your friends. Feel free to let them know about the 7 days of hope.
We did it. We did it, guys. We did it, people. All you who are watching, we did it together.
Trina, we've got a lot of thank yous in the crowd, and Mia says, thank you so much, Hope Team, for this opportunity. Can't wait for the next more days. Waking up at 7 in the morning to watch this is really worth it. I will share this to more people so they can experience this as well. And I was saying, thank you, Trina. Thanks for taking the time to do this. Thank you, thank you. So you're getting a lot of thank you.
And what we also shared this time and chose this time so that the people in Asia, Korea and the Philippines, could not have to get up in the middle of the night. Europe has to get up in the middle of the night, folks, and some of Africa does too. But the Asian people can just maybe get up early, but they can do it. It's different in the middle of the night. So I especially thank. I'm really so thrilled that the book is around the world like it is. I just feel so fortunate. I kind of look at it and say, how'd that ever happen? How did these two little caterpillars? We were never reviewed by the New York Times. We didn't have the big shots, but people told other people, and they crawled around the world like they have. And so here we are on worldwide video live right now. Goodness gracious, how could that happen?
I can't think of a better way to say goodbye to everyone, and perhaps we could all wave goodbye. And thank you so much for joining us. Just another reminder, as Mary Soul said, we're here same, what was it, bat time and bat channel. And if you don't know that reference, what you can do is that you can look it up on Google. Bye, everyone. We all love you. Bye-bye.
The world will have few flowers, so grow your wings and fly. Feed the plants and float by the river, and we'll be here by your side.
Make great choices and take big risks if they're good for you and the rainforest. Sing really loud and don't be afraid. You are the stuff of which butterflies are made. Hope, hope, hope for the flowers, transform, embrace, and realize your power. Los que necesita para vivir. Hope, hope, hope for the flowers, transform, embrace, and realize your power. Los que necesita para vivir. Sometimes the pile that everyone's a-climbing up seems like the shiniest thing. But look in the eyes of the others you've been stepping on and wake to the light of all beings. Hope, hope, hope for the flowers, transform, embrace, and realize your power. El bosque le necesita para vivir. Flowers transform, embrace, and realize your power. El bosque le necesita para vivir. Transform, embrace, and realize your power. El bosque le necesita para vivir. Hope, hope, hope for the flowers. Transform, embrace, and realize your power. El bosque le necesita para vivir. Hope, hope, hope for the flowers. Transform, embrace, and realize your power. El bosque le necesita